Welcome back to the channel. I have been asked pretty much every day, multiple times, what I think the price target of Hedron will be, and I want to cover that in this video. I want to tell you how I'm coming to this conclusion, and I think this is really going to just be the optimistic price target, and I'm going to show you how I'm coming up with this number. So let's get right into it. Here is the app.icosa.pro project. I'm currently in the Hedron tab, and you can see I showed you guys these the other day. I staked 1 million hex in 100,000 hex stakes each, and I think this is just going to be fun to watch this project together and see how good or bad this turns out for me. And as I said in that video, I am not telling people to go all in on hex right now. I have bought some hex at these levels. I've bought some Hedron at roughly these levels, but I really do think that there's a total probability, there's a chance that we're going to have over the next year a very meaningful dip relative to where we are now. I personally want to allocate funds at these levels because the future dip is not unknown, and I want to take advantage of certain things like being in early in the Icosa staking pool while the inflation rate's a little bit higher and it's easier to get in. At least that's some of my theory, but I am expecting that there's a real chance for lower lows coming. Anyway, let's get back on topic. So here is a particular stake, 100,000 hex staked for 5,555 days. And what I really want to focus on right now in this video is the advanceable Hedron amount for this particular stake, 68.9 million. What this advanceable Hedron value should be if price parity is reached is the same amount of value in my hex stake. So if my hex stake was worth $10,000, then if price parity was reached, then my advanceable Hedron amount should also be worth about $10,000. And I think if this project does well over time, if the Hedron inflation is meaningfully addressed and burned, which are big ifs, and there's a reason why I have said that hex is currently, for me, my best risk reward ratio. It's where I'm allocating the majority of my crypto. But I do see Hedron as a potential for a lot higher returns than hex, but I see it as a lot riskier. So this is just explaining the potential price, and I just want to give some caveats. So back into it again. So here is, like I said, these are out of parity, and the theoretical price limit for Hedron is when the advanceable Hedron amount equals the hex stake amount. Right now, we are about 15.7 times lower than this value. So if price parity was reached, the Hedron value should be 15.7 times higher. People also ask me how fast do I think parity would be reached. That is completely speculation, a complete guess. I don't think that we will reach parity in the next year. So it's just for what it's worth. I think it will take longer than that if we ever reach parity. And I'm not trying to be discouraging. I want to be truthful from what I see, and I don't see this happening in the next year. But what do I know? It totally could. I mean, we could somehow blow way past parity or something for a short period of time. That's theoretically possible as well. So here's 15.7. That's how far under we are. And I want to just give this a little bit of context also, because I think this adds a little bit of meaning. Just looking here at in the Icosa portion of the Icosa at app.icosa.pro, you can see that right now I have another 100,000 hex staked for the max amount of time. And just to be very clear, all of this parity only happens with full length 5555 stakes. But for this one, and more or less for as long as this project has existed, we have had pretty close parity between these two prices. So if someone had just created a $10,000 hex stake for the max length of 5,555, they have the ability to turn this in. I have the ability right now, if I wanted to, I could click sell HSI, sell this to the contract and get back, if this was worth 10,000, I would get back $10,000 worth of Icosa, and I could stake that, or I could sell it on the market and get roughly $10,000 back. Of course, I'd pay the Ethereum transaction fees, and I would also pay if there's any slippage or something like that would come out of it. But roughly, these have been in price parity, and I can just show you what it looks like if you look at it on a chart. I think I have that up here, right here. So we are seeing a relatively stable price in the Icosa to HEX ratio. You can see sometimes it jumps way up, and when that happens, it really incentivizes people to mint a bunch of Icosa for their HEX and get, if they even want, they can turn that Icosa back into HEX and get more HEX than they started with, bringing the price back down. When the price dips too low, they have the ability to then come back to the Icosa project and stake that Icosa and get yield on it, because it doesn't make sense, for example, to turn it back into HEX at that point. And so far, Icosa has been a relative stable coin to HEX. But you can see, though, on this chart, and I'm explaining this because I think this is what I hope happens with Hedron. This is the optimistic reality for Hedron in the future. But as you can see, that we had a price increase where basically the Icosa became worth more HEX. Icosa used to be worth roughly 30 HEX, and now it is worth roughly 32 HEX. And there's a whole bunch of reasoning why that is. Part of it is that the T-share rate goes up, and this ratio is based on the T-share rate, and it just makes it likely that over time, one Icosa will be worth more Hedron, because one Icosa's hard. It takes more Hedron to get one Icosa, and all this fun math behind the whole thing. But this is what parity has looked like for the more or less the existence of the Icosa project, which really hasn't been that long. So we'll see what happens over time. But let's get back to Hedron here. So that is what I am hoping to see when eventually a similar chart for this ratio of staked HEX to advanceable Hedron. And like I said, right now, Hedron is roughly 15.7 times underneath that value. And so let's do some fun math. If the HEX price remains constant and we reach parity, if HEX is worth roughly 3 cents and we bought Hedron at this level and then it reached parity, it would be 15.7 times more valuable. So for example, a $10,000 investment in Hedron, if price parity was reached, would then be worth $157,000. That is great. That is awesome. I will take a 15.7x, but it's even more interesting because for parity to be reached, if the HEX price rises, then if there really is parity between Hedron and HEX, the Hedron price should rise as well. And that's when the math gets really fun. So we've got our $10,000 investment and our 15.7 times the price increase to reach parity. But let's say that HEX does a 10x. Let's say that we're roughly at 3 cents now, and HEX is now worth 30 cents. Well, our $10,000 investment then becomes 1.5 million. And you can imagine that in the future, HEX may be worth more than 30 cents. And you can do all kinds of fun calculations. So if we change this to a 2, it is now worth and we have Hedron price parity. Our $10,000 Hedron before the parity was reached at these levels and parity, and then with parity at HEX price of 60 cents, we have $3.1 million worth of Hedron. And that to me is an example of the potential price increase. And I would say this is the relative ceiling price. And you can do all kinds of stuff. Like that's just 60 cents. Maybe we double again to a HEX value of $1.20. I mean, you can do your own math with this, but that would mean the Hedron is worth $6.2 million. And hopefully that makes some amount of sense as far as what price parity would be for Hedron, why I say that there is a lot more potential price increase for Hedron than HEX, but I do see it as a lot riskier. There's a lot of things that have to fall into place for this to happen, and there's probably going to be mass volatility along the path, even if we do reach that, both to the downside and we could have some spikes up or something too. Anyway, guys, this is what I'm looking at. That is an example of what I see for potential Hedron price in the future. I hope this is helpful to you, and I'm having fun with you guys still, showing you this. And obviously I have some skin in the game in both of these projects, and we'll see over time how this really turns out. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Talk to you in the next one. Have a good day.